Hey everybody, and welcome back to the basement. This is episode 5 of the Pallet Workbench build. And today what I'm doing is I'm getting all of the pieces of wood ready to go to build the legs and the uprights that are going to go into the base of the workbench and keep the tabletop elevated. So I'm starting out with essentially 8 pieces of the same type of wood that I'm using for the bench top. These are from industrial pallet skids. So most of this is hardwood. I've got a combination of red oak and hickory here. And I've made this jig for my table saw to kind of turn it into a jointer. And I got this idea from another YouTuber. His channel is called Pask Makes. I believe that's how you say it. But he's an Australian gentleman that does a ton of cool stuff on his channel. And like a lot of starting woodworkers or carpenters, they don't have a ton of money to invest in tools, and a jointer and a planer is something I really wish I would have had on a project like this, given the condition of the wood that I'm using. But this is a cheap, inexpensive way to take some of the elbow grease steps out of the equation. So what this does is just allows you to nip just about a saw thickness worth of wood off and have a fence for it to ride. So when you've got curved boards like this, twisted boards like this, it helps to take some of that out. Thing is, with a lot of twisted wood, is once you take out some of that twist, it's going to reappear after it sits for a little while, and I found that to be true with this wood. But man, it makes a ton of mess. This is I'm still cleaning up sawdust and sanding dust out of my garage since having done this months and months after the fact. I mean, it's everywhere. Now, yes, I am wearing a respirator as I do this, and you can see the garage doors are open here. So here are the 4 legs. I haven't glued these up yet because I need to join the faces. So I'm taking a square and I'm trying to make these pieces of wood as square as I possibly can with hand tools and the limited amount of patience and skill that I have with these tools. So I'm going to be using a combination of pencils and a pencil technique where you just put a squiggly line across the board in a carpenter square, and you just take down the high spots until you get eventually as flat a surface as you have patience to accomplish. That's pretty much what I'm doing here. And it's really frustrating because I don't have the right type of hand plane. I don't feel like dropping $130, $150, $200 on a hand plane. I'd rather just buy a nice planer or jointer to do this. I spent a couple $100 more. But anyway, I'm using the cheap Harbor Freight jack plane that I have, and then eventually I go and get my dad's really old vintage Bailey smoothing plane that ended up being my favorite plane out of all the planes that I've been trying over the course of this project. That one just seems to adjust the best, most predictably, and just seems to be the easiest to work with and easiest to keep. It holds an edge the best out of all of them too. So that's essentially what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to double up these boards, so I'm getting those glue faces as straight and flat as I possibly can. So once I get that done with the 8 boards that I'm using, figure out which ones want to stick together, then it's time to glue them up, which I, for some reason, don't have the video footage of me doing the glue up, but you kind of get the idea. I did mess up 2 of them after I glued them up. Those are the 2 that I scooted out of the frame right there. So I had to remake 2 of them, which sucked, but it was necessary. It just wasn't going to be a good piece of wood to work with. So I'm taking these to the router sled, and the reason why I'm doing that is because those glue joint faces are kind of gnarly, and those weren't the ones that I spent the time hand planing because I knew I was going to come back and do this, which is a lot quicker way of squaring them up. So I do both faces, both opposing faces with the router sled, and that takes a lot of the hand plane work out of it. It's not as fast or efficient or accurate as, say, a jointer or a thickness planer, but it definitely takes a lot of the hand tool work out of the equation. So it gets you there faster is basically what it boils down to. And yes, I should be wearing a respirator while I'm using the router. I know better now, since having done this a few times and then going to blow your nose after, seeing all you don't think it's going to give you small sawdust, but the router does. You see those big chunks coming off and you feel, I'm not going to be breathing that in. You're breathing in a lot of small dust. So wear a respirator, folks. I'm a knucklehead. I'm a slow learner. At least I am wearing eye protection. And I do have some earbuds in. Not for the purpose of protecting my hearing, but for the purpose of entertainment with music. All right, so that's all done. Now it's time to start filling in the cracks and crevices after I trim them to length. So there you can see I've got the 4 legs, I've got the feet, and I've got the cross members to make up those uprights. Now you're seeing another attachment that I made for the table saw. This is probably the only one you're going to see of its kind on this kind of a entry-level table saw. Although I will say, for $110, $120 what it costs for this Ryobi table saw, this thing is phenomenal. I mean, I've done a lot of projects with it. I've had it for a couple years, and for as hard as I am on it and as much wood as I've put through it, I'm shocked at the value. I thought it would have crapped out by now, but it's still going strong. So highly recommend it for the money. It's hard to get the blade squared up perfectly, but a cross-cut sled like this definitely helps you make nice, straight, repeatable cuts. So there's tons of YouTube videos out there showing you how to make a cross-cut sled. Like I said, this is probably one of the only ones you're going to see on this entry-level Ryobi table saw, and this only is like an $8 piece of MDF and a couple of pieces of oak, 1/4-inch oak that I used for the track runners. But it works really, really well, makes really, really straight cuts, and it's a lot safer than the little janky miter gauge that comes with it. So after I get everything cut to length, then it's going to be time to start filling in all the cracks and crevices and knot holes and nail holes. I forget where I got the idea to use these bamboo skewers to fill in the nail holes. But anyway, I ended up using these bamboo skewers to plug these nail holes, just putting a little bit of glue inside the nail hole and a little bit of glue on the skewer, and then I'm just using some pliers with a pair of snips in them to hammer them down into the hole and snip them off. And it really, really worked great. Not only does it fill the hole nice, and it goes all the way through, it fills the entire length of the hole. It strengthens the wood, obviously, and it kind of looks cool. It's a nice little, because of the bamboo versus the hickory and the red oak, there's definitely a color contrast there that once I smooth it out, it really looks cool. So after I snip them off and let the glue dry, then I come back with a chisel and a block plane just to get those sharp edges off. And of course, I've got to go through all 16 pieces of timber that I've got on my table here. But you can see it kind of looks pretty cool, but you see a lot of cracks and knot holes and carpenter bee holes and other stuff still that needs to be addressed. So I decided to do that with some epoxy. And this is just the cheapest epoxy, literally the cheapest epoxy that I can find on Amazon. I think this was ended up being like half a quart or something like that, and it was only like $18, and this is just to kind of try out. And I also got some orange copper mica flakes that are used in like bath bombs to color the epoxy, just to give it some personality and some character. And I ordered a sample pack of different colors, so I ended up experimenting quite a bit over the course of each of the faces that I have to fill in with epoxy. And this is probably the part of the project that it just sucked the most, because I'm not a patient person, and if you don't have patience, you're probably not going to attempt to make a workbench out of pallet skids like I am. You're going to go buy some wood that's probably fairly close to straight and flat, and you're going to get this done in a couple of days, not several months like I did. But I enjoy the trash to treasure kind of mentality, and using things that otherwise would have been thrown away or wasted. There's something appealing about that to me, and it certainly yields a unique piece. But here's the first of 4 faces of these pieces of wood that I have to do this on, and some of these I have to do multiple times because the capillary action of the wood, because it's a very open grain wood, sucks the epoxy in, and although it's proud of it proud of the surface once it's poured, it sinks down in and gets absorbed in, and then you got to do another coat sometimes. And then once you get all that done, you've got to get rid of this excess. Now, I wish I would have figured out a better way to do this than with planes and sanders, because all I have is a little finishing orbital sander at this point. I'd later go out and buy a disc sander, which works way better for hogging off material than the little square finishing sander. But this is the process that I did, and this is one of the reasons why it takes so long, why this is so frustrating, because you got to do this, you got to repeat this process before you start, actually doing the joinery. You got to do this for all 4 faces of each piece of wood. If you're trying to get it, again, I'm taking these extra steps to stabilize the wood and make sure that it's going to be durable for an extended period of time. Again, I'm trying to make something that my kids and grandkids will be able to use, and that's one of the purposes of this. I want my kids to see this thing getting built, have an appreciation for the amount of work that went into it, and then long after I'm gone, hopefully this thing will still be alive and kicking and be the foundation of lots of cool projects. I like that idea. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for this particular episode of The Basement. Next time, I'm going to actually do the joinery for all of the both uprights, and hopefully we'll get this thing wrapped up in the next episode or 2. So I thank you so much for watching. Also, I'm very, very curious to know, do you like seeing just captions on these videos, or do you like the voiceover? I'm doing the voiceover to give context to what it is that I'm doing and why I'm doing it the way that I'm doing it. Not because I think my techniques or methods are good, but I'm looking for feedback too. I mean, that's the great thing about YouTube, is this is a heck of a cool community to share information and get inspiration for projects, and that's the whole purpose of me doing this. I don't think I'm doing this well or better than anybody else. I'm just trying to share the inspiration that I get from other creators like myself. So